In today's show, a high-stakes peace meeting in Moscow, a $6 billion gift for America's kids, and a solar storm heading our way, plus a spy scandal in Ukraine, how smartphones may be harming kids earlier than we thought, and the surprising impact of The Chosen on viewers' faith. And here's today's trivia question. What trees traveled the most miles before being planted? It's Wednesday, December 3rd. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Hello and happy Wednesday. You have found the Flyover Podcast, and we are so glad that you're here. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown, and our goal is to give you straight, no-nonsense news. And today, there's a great mix of politics, sports, finance, and of course, we'll give you the results of yesterday's poll question and a brand new one for you to vote on. Ready to take off? Here are the biggest stories of the day. U.S. Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Tuesday to walk him through a revised 19-point peace plan, one that Ukrainian officials tentatively agreed to after a round of talks in Florida over the weekend. The White House says it's, quote, very optimistic after 2 weeks of nonstop diplomacy around President Trump's push to end the nearly 4-year war. Ahead of the meeting, Putin warned that Russia is, quote, ready right now to fight if Europe tries to derail the negotiations by demanding changes to Trump's proposal. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky expects a direct briefing from Witkoff and Kushner on Wednesday when they meet him in Europe. Next, Michael and Susan Dell are pledging a massive $6.25 billion to help launch Trump accounts, new investment accounts for about 25 million American children. Treasury will deposit $1,000 for kids born between 2025 and 2028. And the Dell's donation adds $250 for children 10 and under, especially in lower income zip codes where families won't get the government seed money. Starting July 2026, parents, relatives, employers, and nonprofits can contribute up to $5,000 a year, and the money will be invested in index funds. When kids turn 18, they can use the funds for education, buying a home, or starting a business. The Dells say it's a simple but powerful way to transform lives, and they're hoping other donors join in. And National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, is issuing a geomagnetic storm watch after a major solar flare erupted from a massive new sunspot on Sunday night. The flare knocked out radio communications across Australia and parts of Southeast Asia, and it came with a coronal mass ejection that could hit Earth as early as today. NOAA says the storm could interfere with power grids, navigation signals, and radio systems, and additional solar activity is possible as sunspot AR4299 rotates to face Earth this week. Here are your top political headlines. President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared more details Tuesday about the recent strike on what the administration says was a drug boat. Hegseth said he didn't see any survivors after the first strike and wasn't watching when the second strike was ordered, but added that he supported the decision either way. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is recommending that the U.S. expand its travel ban, which currently restricts entry from 19 countries, to roughly 30 nations. Her push comes after last week's shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C., and the attack, the administration says, highlights new security risks. Federal officials are also preparing a targeted immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota, focusing largely on Somali immigrants living unlawfully in the U.S. The effort is expected to center on the Twin Cities area, particularly St. Paul and Minneapolis. And lastly, President Trump has officially pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was serving a 45-year sentence in the U.S. for trafficking about 400 tons of cocaine. Trump called the prosecution an example of Biden-era overreach and said the pardon was necessary to correct it. More on this story in the show notes below. Here's some podcast extra stories that you're not going to find in the email edition. A former British soldier has been arrested in Ukraine, accused of actually helping Russia assassinate several Ukrainian political figures. Officials say the man, Ross David Cutmore, was detained back in October after Ukraine's state security service accused him of supplying weapons used in the killings of Ukrainian politician and two activists. Cutmore had originally traveled to Ukraine to train soldiers as an instructor, but allegedly switched sides months later, passing military intelligence to Russia. If he's convicted, he could face up to 12 years in prison. A new study is raising red flags about giving kids a smartphone too young. Researchers followed more than 10,000 U.S. adolescents and found that kids who got a smartphone before the age of 12 had higher rates of depression, obesity, and poor sleep by age 13 compared to kids without phones. The study doesn't say which exactly phone habits led to these issues, but experts say the risks are tied to things like late night use, exposure to harmful content, and disrupted sleep. They're encouraging families to set clear expectations early and limit phone use at night to help offset those problems. And actor Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on The Chosen, says the show is having a surprising real-world impact. In an interview on The View, he said some viewers have reached out to say they were lifelong atheists but ended up exploring Christianity after watching the series. The Chosen tells the story of Jesus through the eyes of the people around him, and its fifth season is setting the stage for the crucifixion and resurrection. Rumi says the messages he's received show just how powerful the storytelling has become for its audience. Coming up, Russian athletes get a surprise Olympic green light. NASA's new boss wants to move a space shuttle across the country, and the TSA is about to charge you for forgetting your real ID. All those stories and so much more coming up. But first, this episode is brought to you by Native Path Collagen, a simple science-backed way to support your skin, hair, nails, joints, and gut health. Native Path uses types 1 and 3 collagen, the two kinds that make up nearly 90% of the collagen in your body. There are no fillers, no additives, just one clean, pure ingredient that's third-party tested for quality. It's completely flavorless, so you can stir it right in your morning coffee, a smoothie, or even soup. They've sold over 4 million jars and have more than 1 million happy customers, all backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. If you want to try it, I suggest you do, because I just got my hair cut today and my hairdresser was like, "Oh my gosh, your hair grew so fast since the last time I cut it." And I said, it's because of the collagen. So highly suggest it. And Native Path is offering special bundle deals right now, so you can grab 3 or 6 packs at a great price. Just head to getnativepathcollagen.com/flyover or click the link in today's show notes to get yourself started. In finance, the global economy is proving more resilient than many expected. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development now projects the world will grow 3.2% this year. Even with ongoing trade wars, and the group actually raised its U.S. growth forecast to 2%, up from what it predicted back in June. In fashion news, the Prada Group has officially purchased its Milan-based rival Versace in a massive $1.4 billion deal. The goal is to relaunch Versace's brand and expand its global reach under Prada's umbrella. And Yankee Candle is shrinking its retail footprint. Parent company Newell Brands says it will close 20 stores beginning in January as part of a broader effort to streamline operations for the once iconic scent brand. Here's your stock market update. It was a strong day on Wall Street across the board yesterday. The Nasdaq closed up 0.59%. The S&P 500 added 0.25%, and the Dow climbed 0.39%. Bitcoin also had a big rebound, jumping 5.5%, and gold moved up 0.10% to $4,206 an ounce. And your biggest mover of the day was MongoDB, which surged more than 22% after the cloud-native database company beat quarterly earnings expectations and raised its full-year guidance. In sports, an international arbitration court has ruled that Russian skiers and snowboarders can compete in this winter's Olympics, but only as neutral athletes. They've been banned from global competition since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and this decision marks the first major exception heading into the Games. Kentucky is making a big coaching move. The school hired Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein as its new head football coach, just a day after firing Mark Stoops. Stein is only 36 years old, and an interesting twist, played quarterback at Kentucky's rival Louisville from 2009 to 2012. You can read more about this story in today's show notes. And two gymnasts are now suing USA Gymnastics, saying the organization failed to properly investigate allegations against coach Sean Gardner. Gardner was arrested in August on sexual abuse charges, and the athletes claim earlier warnings should have been taken more seriously. In science and technology, President Trump's pick to lead NASA, Jared Isaacman, says he wants to move the Space Shuttle Discovery out of the Smithsonian in Virginia and relocate it to Houston's Johnson Space Center. He's pitching it as a way to bring one of NASA's most iconic shuttles back to the heart of mission control. Next, scientists have detected tiny lightning bolts on Mars for the very first time. Using the Perseverance rover's microphone, researchers picked up 55 electrical discharges coming from dust storms and dust devils, a big step toward understanding the red planet's atmosphere. And December's cold moon rises on Thursday. That's tomorrow. It's the final supermoon of 2025, and it'll look about 7 to 8% bigger and brighter than a typical full moon. Plus, it reaches the highest point in the night sky of any full moon this year. So make sure you step outside and get a good look. Here are a few extra headlines to leave you with today, including some important information. TSA is rolling out a new fee starting February 1st, so travelers who show up to the airport without a real ID or a passport will be charged $45, and that pass only works for 10 days before you'd have to pay it again. It's part of the agency's push to enforce the long-delayed Real ID rules. A rare piece of art history just shattered records. Fabergé's winter eggs sold for $30.2 million at Christie's in London, making it the most expensive Fabergé work ever auctioned and topping the previous records from 1994 and 2002. In Italy, a mayor is apologizing after a town's Christmas ice rink left a statue of opera legend Luciano Pavarotti frozen knee-deep in the ice. The display sparked outrage from Pavarotti's widow, who said it ridiculed her late husband's memory. In Colorado, a massive herd of elk squeezed into two backyards in Loveland, filling patios, walkways, and every corner of the property. The same herd recently shut down a local golf course and even blocked a highway. You can see the video linked in today's show notes. And lastly, psychologists say the viral gray rocking strategy, do you know what that is? That means you try and act as dull and neutral as possible. They're saying it can help people get through stressful holiday gatherings with difficult relatives. Experts say it can be effective in the moment, but warn that using it long-term can actually damage relationships and shut down meaningful communication. You think? Here are the results of yesterday's poll question. What's your favorite room in your house? 31% said the living room, 14% said kitchen, 14% said den, 13% said bedroom, 11% said other, 10% said office, and 7% said bathroom. Thank you to everyone who voted. And I just have a quick question. What is a den? Isn't it the same thing as a living room? And if not, then what the heck is it? Please tell me in the comments section below. I can't wait to read the answers. And here's today's poll question. Do you check the expiration date on food before you buy it? Either yes, no, or only before I eat it? That is a great question, and I really had to reflect on this one before I voted on it. I know I checked the expiration date on milk, but other than that, not really. So I'm going to go with only before I eat it. What about you? You can vote in the show notes below, and I'll read the answers in tomorrow's episode. Here's today's trivia question. What trees traveled the most miles before being planted? The answer is moon trees. Their seeds traveled to the moon and back aboard Apollo 14 with astronaut Stuart Roosa before being planted across the U.S. by Forest Service. About 450 of those seeds sprouted, and roughly 80 are still alive today. Well, everyone, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Flyover Podcast. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with me. And before you go, okay, don't forget to check out the Flyover Holiday Gift Guide for great curated ideas for everybody on your list. You can find it at theflyovergiftguide.com. Once again, it's theflyovergiftguide.com. I don't think we could have made it any easier for you to remember. But if you forget, I promise I will link it in today's show notes. I'll see you tomorrow for more news. Until then, thanks for flying with us.